Spot's baby sister. This book belongs to Spot's baby sister. Spot, we have a surprise for you. What is it, Dad? It's your baby sister. Her name is Susie. Isn't she tiny? We have a present for you, Spot. A new bone. Who is at the door? Helen, Tom, I've got a baby sister. Great, can we play with her? Spot, look for a toy for Susie. She can play with this. What has Susie taken? Susie, stop! Susie, where's Susie? What's under the table, Spot? It's Susie. She's asleep. Time for a nap, Susie. What can we do now, Spot? Oh, read us a story. Who's there? Susie's awake. She wants to play. You're a big brother now, Spot. I like Susie, Mum. She's fun. Possum magic. Possum magic. Once upon a time, but not very long ago, deep in the Australian bush lived two possums. Their names were Hush and Grandma Poss. Grandma Poss made bush magic. She made wombats blue and kookaburras pink. She made dingoes smile and emus shrink. But the best magic of all was the magic that made Hush invisible. What adventures Hush had! Because she couldn't be seen, she could be squashed by koalas. Because she couldn't be seen, she could slide down kangaroos' tails. Because she couldn't be seen, she was safe from snakes, which is why Grandma Poss had made her invisible in the first place. But one day, quite unexpectedly, Hush said, "Grandma, I want to know what I look like. Please, could you make me visible again?" "Of course I can," said Grandma Poss, and she began to look through her magic books. She looked into this book and she looked into that. There was magic for thin and magic for fat, magic for tall and magic for small, but the magic she was looking for wasn't there at all. Grandma Poss looked miserable. "Don't worry, Grandma," said Hush. "I don't mind." But in her heart of hearts she did. All night long, Grandma Poss thought and thought. The next morning, just before breakfast, she shouted, "It's something to do with food. People food, not possum food, but I can't remember what. We'll just have to try and find it." So later that day, they left the bush where they'd always been to find what it was to make Hush seen. They ate Anzac biscuits in Adelaide, Monterey and Minties in Melbourne, steak and salad in Sydney, and pumpkin scones in Brisbane. Hush remained invisible. Don't lose heart, said Grandma Poss. Let's see what we can find in Darwin. It was there in the far north of Australia that they found a Vegemite sandwich. Grandma crossed her claws and crossed her feet. Hush breathed deeply and began to eat. A tail, shouted both possums at once, for there it was, a brand new visible tail. Later, on a beach in Perth, they ate a piece of pavlova. Hush's legs appeared. So did her body. You look wonderful, you precious possum, said Grandma Poss. Next stop, Tasmania, and over the sea they went. In Hobart, late one night, in the kitchens of the casino, they saw a lamington on a plate. Hush closed her eyes and nibbled. Grandma Poss held her breath and waited. It worked, she cried. And she was right. Hush could be seen from head to tail. Grandma Poss hugged Poss and they both danced. Here we go round the lamington plate till early in the morning. From that time onwards, Hush was visible, but once a year on her birthday, she and Grandma Poss ate a Vegemite sandwich, a piece of pavlova and half a lamington, just to make sure that Hush stayed visible forever. And she did. Pig the Pug. This book belongs to Pig. Pig the Pug. Pig was a pug, and I'm sorry to say he was greedy and selfish in most every way. He lived in a flat with a sausage dog Trevor, but when was he nice to him? Well, I'll tell you, never. You've got some great toys there, poor Trevor would say, but Pig would just grumble, they're mine, go away. But it might be more fun, said Trevor to Pig, if we both played together. Well, Pig flipped his wig. No, they are mine. Are you deaf? Only mine. You keep your paws off them, you sausage-shaped swine. I know what your game is. You want me to share, but I'll never do that. I won't, and I swear. And with that he proceeded to gather his stuff and make a big pile with a huff and a puff. And once he had gathered them up in a pile, he howled from the top with a satisfied smile. There, shouted Pig, now you won't get my loot. It's mine, 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 mine. So why don't you scoot? But just at that moment, poor Trevor did see the pile was wobbling. Oh, dear me! Watch out up there! Good Trevor did cry. But the shame of it was, well, pigs can't fly. These days it's different, I'm happy to say. It's so very different in most every way. Yes, Pig shares his toys now, and Trevor's his friend, and they both play together while Pig's on the mend. Arial Sea, Adventures Under the Sea. Adventures Under the Sea. Early one morning under the sea, Arial woke up her friend Flounder. Come on, follow me, she said excitedly. Flounder yawned. Sure, but where are we going, Arial? Arial smiled. It's a surprise. Flounder, hurry up, Arial called. You know I can't swim that fast, Flounder panted. Arial led Flounder to a big sunken boat. Isn't it fantastic? Flounder was not sure. The boat looked dark inside. Let's get out of here, he said nervously. You're not getting cold fins now, are you? Asked Ariel. Who, me? Flounder shuddered. No way. The boat was full of human treasure. Something shiny caught Ariel's eye. Oh my gosh, Ariel gasped. Have you ever seen anything so wonderful in your entire life? Whoa, cool, Flounder exclaims. But, what is it? Ariel shrugged. I don't know. Just then, Flounder heard a rumbling noise. Did you hear something? He whispered. But Ariel didn't hear him. She was busy collecting treasures. I wonder what this is. Suddenly, a big shark burst through the boat. Shark, shark, Flounder shouted. Swim, a shark. Ariel and Flounder swam for their lives. Boing! But Flounder wasn't looking where he was swimming and bumped his head. He suddenly felt very dizzy. Instead of swimming, he was sinking. Ariel looked back and saw her friend falling. Flounder, she called. Ariel swam as fast as she could and caught Flounder. Then, just when the shark was about to catch them both, he got caught instead. Flounder stuck out his tongue at the shark. You big bully. As they swam away, Flounder asked, That was really scary, right, Ariel? Oh, Flounder, don't be such a guppy, Ariel joked. I'm not a guppy, Flounder answered. But could your next surprise maybe not include sharks? Ariel and Flounder laughed as they raced all the way back home. Tiny's Big Wish. Tiny's Big Wish. In Africa, where the grass grows high and the ostrich stretch their neck to see across the plains, the elephants are marching. Hup, 2, 3, 4. We elephants are very sure that we are big and strong, with enormous ears and trunks so long. We're always brave, we're always bold, we're always warm and never cold. Hup, 2, 3, 4. Who could ask for anything more? On and on the elephants march, down to the river to drink. But not all the elephants are big and strong. Not all of them are brave and bold. There is one elephant who is very small. He has little baby legs and cannot march quickly enough. He is always running behind the others. This is Tiny. Tiny trips over his little elephant feet. Then he tips over his little elephant trunk. His mother waits for him to catch up and takes him down to the river. Oh dear, sighs Tiny, and his mother scrubs his back. I wish I was big, I wish I was strong, I wish I was brave, and I wish I could march in time. Then Tiny sings his own sad little song. Little is such a hard thing to be. Everyone else is bigger than me. I wish I was brave. I wish I was strong. I wish my trunk was ever so long. I wish I could march up 2, 3, 4 and not be a baby anymore. His mother smiled as she sprayed Tiny's lovely little face with fresh, cool water. Don't worry, Tiny, she says. Once we were all even ever so little too. One day you will be big and strong just like all the other elephants. Tiny looked up at his mother. He looked up at her big wrinkly knees, on her big crinkly ears and her bright blinking eyes on the top of her great domed head. As big as you? He asked. Bigger, says his mother. But Tiny wandered off, shaking his head sadly, because he doesn't quite believe her. I wish I was big and had an enormous great body like you, said Tiny, the old water buffalo. Don't worry, Tiny, says Buffalo. One day your body will be enormous too. Tiny looks up at him. He looks up from Buffalo's great long mane and his curly long horns, right to the top of his great hairy head. As big as yours, he asked. Bigger, said Buffalo. But Tiny wanders off, shaking his head sadly. He doesn't quite believe him. I wish I was big and had gigantic great belly just like you, said Tiny to Harry the hippo. Don't worry, Tiny, said Harry. One day your belly will be enormous too. Tiny looks up at him. He looks up from Harry's huge feet to his great yawning mouth to the top of Harry's enormous flat head. As big as yours, he asks. Bigger, says Harry. But still, Tiny doesn't quite believe him. He decides to ask some of the other animals. Will I be as tall as you one day? Tiny asks Ostrich. Taller, says Ostrich. Says Tiny, thinking hard. Will I be bigger than you one day? Tiny asks Zebra. Of course, says Zebra, laughing. Will I really be big and tall one day? Tiny asks the lion, scampering water hogs. Of course, they all say and smile at the little elephant. Tiny goes back to the herd, who are all busy marching and chomping to keep themselves big and strong. Finally, Tiny believes what he has been told. I will be bigger than you one day, Tiny tells his mother. I'll be stronger than you one day, Tiny tells his big sister. I'll have a longer trunk than you one day, Tiny tells his aunt. We know, they all laugh together. This time, as the herd marched off, Tiny stomps along proudly beside his mother and he sings his new song. Being so little is not so bad, it's not forever, so I won't be sad. I will be brave, I will be strong, I will have a trunk that's ever so long. I will march in time, 1, 2, 3, 4, and not be a baby anymore. And now all the elephants agree, Tiny will be the biggest, bravest elephant of them all.